Good morning again. And boy, I hope I'm going to kill the title of this show. Do it for me.
Nyumba Upendo.
Thank you. And I'm sitting in for our brother Kwaku. And man,
I'm a Wasi.
Anawasi.
You butchered that too.
Charge it, charge it to my head, not my heart. Man, I'm honored to one to be sitting in for Kwaku, but to have in studio with us student minister William Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum
Alaikum salam, my
to
brother.
you, Brother Keith, and the staff and the radio listening audience.
Man, yeah, been here last time you was here, Truth, Justice, Politics, and that was an incredible conversation. I appreciate you. The irony was that I was going to reach out to you for tomorrow
Mm-hmm.
because tomorrow is the 30th anniversary of the Million Man March. Kwaku had called and asked, so this is perfect, man.
Well, I appreciate you having us.
Man, I appreciate you. And I was telling them as we were coming in the studio that a student minister used to come on my mom's radio program at WGLB, and I don't know if people, well, in some ways, people might not have understood the significance of that because my mother just still has this sense of our community, our collective community, and how we have these different voices, and so she not no matter. And when I was a little guy, um, um, I lived on what is now Val Phillips. Right around the corner, the Nation of Islam had Shabazz store. They had the cleaners. They had the school. So it was the little guy. And then I say that I'm prefacing all this. And then when I was 14, my mom allowed me to go to Chicago for Savior's Day, and I had an opportunity to hear the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I had never experienced anything like that my whole life, man. That was just it. So that history, and so you hear, just for folks who don't know, tomorrow is the 30th anniversary of the Million Man March. We came last year, was it? No, when did we come in?
Yeah.
Well, you called in, but didn't we had when it was. But we all came in because Marvin Pratt was here.
Oh, yeah.
Remember we talked about the anniversary of Million Man March. So when that call, talk about that call that was made 30 years ago.
Well, first of all, I wanted to give honor to your mother. She, I didn't know that was your mother. I didn't make the connection, but she understood the oneness of God, and she also saw how Minister Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam and even the mosque locally, we were striving to reach out to the churches to minimize our differences and maximize our common belief and our common needs as a community. So I really appreciate the fact that she would lend us the airwaves that she managed, and we're ever in debt and grateful for that. But the Million Man March was the greatest show of unity that the black man in America has ever shown. Not just in America, but all over the world. Um, this is the 30th anniversary, as you've said, and there's a lot said about it. But 30 years ago, there's a whole generation, two generations of people who really don't know about that march, right? You have some listeners who may be children, and they, they don't really know about it because we have not done a good job um, passing on not just the history, but the mission, and there's no continuity between generations. And so even the motive of the call, um, the the purpose for the call. Uh, Minister Farrakhan, um, in the 80s and 90s, if you remember, he used to just go from city to city teaching. And God showed him that their government of the United States of America had planned a war. And that war was against Libya. It was President Reagan. But he saw it as a wider war, that tiny nation, Libya, was just a sign of the tiny nation that is within America. And he saw a move about to be made on our youth, Black youth, under the guise of a war against drugs and gangs. And he saw the movies that were being put out, like Boys in the Hood and Menace to Society. Remember all of those movies, right? And those movies go all over the world. And they showed an image of the Black male in particular as maniacal, as a cold-hearted killer, as bestial. And what do you do with a beast? You get rid of them. So Minister Farrakhan saw this plan, and he began to go throughout the country, from city to city, town to town, came to Milwaukee on a Stop the Killing tour. And, thousands come out. And at that time when the minister spoke, tens of thousands would come out to hear. And he was warning our people that we have to put down the guns. We have to stop the killing.
Let me just see if and prior to that, I want to say like 91, 92, didn't he have the gang summit in LA and in Chicago? Am I correct?
Several gang summits, LA, Chicago, Minnesota. All of this is a part of the work that the Nation of Islam and Minister Farrakhan was doing already. But this tour was to avoid what the minister saw as a move being made on our people. And of course, we're playing right into the plan because of our own actions. And then after he finished that tour, he began to speak to men only. And then the first men only event, it was in New York. And he said that he would have 1 million man march. And he didn't plan it. It wasn't something that he had thought about. It was just God inspired, right? So when it came out of his mouth, he said, okay, well, we got to go after that, right? So I think this is so we began to work, and in this city we had many rallies and organizing meetings. WNOV was so instrumental. And at that time, 1290 was very instrumental. But NOV really embraced it and really promoted it. And we thank God, and may God forever be pleased with Mr. Jones for his embracing of.
Matter of fact, the first time I met Mr. Jones, I was on the plane. There was a group of, I don't know how I got on that plane, who's who of Black men in the city who flew out for the march.
Yeah.
And that's the first time I had met Mr. Jones.
Yeah.
On that flight. And it interesting juxtaposition in terms of where we were. We were at this point, we're coming out of the 80s. I think we were certainly dealing with crack and the impact that crack had had. And as you talked about, the violence that we saw that was probably directly caused by crack, his business, people out trying to handle their business, putting work in. It was interesting. So you said something that really, we're gonna get 1 million men. Now we do that, right? Oh, we gonna get 100,000 people. Then we go, man, if I get 50, I'm cool. Do you think, because there was more than 1 million Black men there? Let me also say this: there was opposition. Talking about my mom, but there was opposition from every Black major denomination from their leadership, right? I don't know what the number of people were in the Nation of Islam. It wasn't 1 million. The majority of people who were there were not members of the Nation of Islam.
Well, that's why this history must be preserved, because it wasn't just the Nation of Islam's history. It was our history as a people, and it was the Black man and woman, because Black women supported and organized behind the scenes, encouraged their men to go. They understood the motive for the march. And so, that day, we had educated, uneducated. You talked about the gang summits, vice lords, disciples, Bloods, Crips. You had the athletes. You had entertainers. You had doctors. You had professional people. Every segment of the black community was at that march, and it was a slice of heaven. It was the greatest show of unity. There was no fighting, there was no disagreement. The Spirit of God was on our men, and the motive of the march. And that's the important thing to understand. The motive of the march was not to go to DC to demand anything from government. It was not to go begging. It was it was a show because of the image of the black man. And I don't know if you remember this, and I don't even know if you knew this, but the prime minister of Japan at that time signaled to the world that we should not invest in the United States until they get rid of their Negro problem. That's how bad it was. That's how the image of the black male was seen worldwide. So on that day, CNN covered the whole thing, C-SPAN. The whole world saw black men shoulder to shoulder, making a pledge, asking God and before the world and witnessing and asking our women to forgive us, making an atonement, making a pledge to be more responsible, making a pledge not to be the destructive forces in the community that we have been, not to be the abusers of our women, not to hurt and kill one another. I mean, we made that kind of pledge, and it was that day that sent a signal throughout the world and a whole image of the black man throughout the world that changed the perception and what we believe put a halt or a delay on the plan to make a move on our people. And for anybody who thinks, oh man, why, I don't believe that they would come in and kill our people wholesale. But if you look at what's going on politically right now, it shouldn't be a stretch.
Well, a couple of things, and I'm going to use the Bible for this analogy. Um, when the population of there weren't the Israelites and the Hebrew people in Egypt, and that population began to grow, and they soon were going to outnumber the Egyptians. The way that they came at this population, the genocide that they used, was to eliminate the male children. Remember that suppose
Right.
Moses was supposed to be taken out,
Right.
but he was preserved. Go for the male, go for the seed, right? And then you injure the people. They said that we'll get rid of the men, and then they said we'll absorb their women because they're lively. I don't know what that was, but the point is that you always go after the male seed, and in that instance, I think that the prophetic insight that Minister Farrakhan had to be able to see that and then to make that call. I was sitting, I'm a news junkie. So as I'm getting ready to go, I'm watching C-SPAN. So I'm watching C-SPAN. It must have been 6 a.m, then 7 o'clock DC time. And you're already seeing the buses there. And it was dark. So you had no sense so when we got on the plane, my mom, my wife, and my oldest nephew, my mom, she took us to the airport. Instead of going to work that day, my wife went home because C-SPAN showed it. BET, they began to show it. By 9 o'clock, all the networks, we're not just talking about the cable networks, the regular broadcast network, because when you saw that image, there's so many great photos, but that great photo from the Capitol where you look at black men stretched from the Capitol to the Washington Monument. Now, this is how they used to figure out how to count the crowds. They call out a grid. From the Capitol to the Washington Monument is 1.5 miles. That means you had 1.5 miles of people. You only see that at an inauguration, right? Obama had more than a million. But it was literally, so when you said that let's do a million plus men showed up. I don't hopefully that's not lost on folks. I mean, that wouldn't have been, and I know Tyrone Dumas listens, and so as we were, I don't know, Tyrone's on the plane, but we were walking and we got off the metro. We walked, we didn't hear anything, and then all of a sudden we walked. There's a million people here. Personally, what did that feel like for you?
Well, as one of the organizers and one who was sleep deprived, we were on the mall for prayer at before 5 a.m. And it was a call to prayer, Muslim call to prayer. And at that time, there were 300,000 people there. And it was just very exhilarating, very powerful. As the sun came up, you could just see men coming from all directions. It was very powerful. I think I called in to speak on the radio to NOV, and I called in to 1290. I spoke with Brother Eric Bond. And, he could just hear the excitement. He could just hear the exhilaration. He could feel the energy through the phone. So it was just overwhelming. It was really it was very difficult to really describe the feeling. But when you have that kind of unity and the Spirit of God is on the mall and coming through the people, then it's just a divine feeling.
And we there were some things that we were told that we shouldn't do. Based on the spirit of it, I don't even know if it was necessary, because I got a sense of the seriousness that brothers were taking that march. People made sacrifices. Obviously, you take off from work for folks to get there. And it was one of those, well, obviously a moment that I'll never forget in my life, because to be a part of that and to experience that, because I wasn't old enough to go to the March on Washington, right? And that to that point had been the biggest I think the the Vietnam one was, they had about 300,000 people there, but literally a million people there, to the point now the National Park Service won't even count crowds, because there were people out there who never wanted that conception. You talked about how the Japanese prime minister was a conception out there that you could bring together a million black men and ain't no problem. Because I've been to some spots.
What we learned afterwards is that the armed forces were right under our feet,
right,
waiting for something to jump off so that they could disrupt what was going on. But they didn't have anything to do, because there were no incidents, there was no fighting, it was just love, there was peace. And we were so packed in there as men that if a brother had to go to relieve himself, they had to actually pick him up and kind of pass him over.
There were kids who were sleeping on the ground,
right?
And it wasn't. But maybe you create. I think how you create the expectation when people come in terms of behavior. But that was never, I'm not. That was always
See, that's why the motive is so important to understand, brothers. We're not going to Washington, D.C. for anything else but to atone for our wrong, atone for our negligence, atone for not being the fathers that we should, the uncles that we should, the husbands that we should, the sons that we should be. Members of the community, we've been destructive forces of our community. We have done that. We want to go before the world and before God. We want to atone to our women, and we want to atone to God. And so, there's some brothers that might say, well, I've been a good husband. I've been the best that I can be. I don't feel like I need to atone. But that spirit wasn't prevalent, because we understood that no one man can rise above the condition of his people, right? So we are one. We're looked at as one. that signal of the prime minister. He wasn't looking at the Barack Obamas of the world. He wasn't looking at, you know, the Magic Johnsons. He wasn't looking at the respectable, productive black male. He was looking at the scapegoat of what's going on in America, the worst part of our actions as black men.
And it was a shout and acknowledgement of my humanity, you know, because part of what has made racism so virulent is that it's the dehumanization, the dehumanizing part of it. If I treat you, if I see you as less than human, then that can justify my less than humane behavior towards you. In Gaza right now, because the Jewish people do not look at the Palestinian people as fully human, then it can justify the genocide that we saw happening. And so I think we have to proclaim our humanity and make sure that it's clear that I am fully human, right? But then that's not just how the world sees me, but it is also how I see myself. And I think that moment, because the word that I didn't hear was pride, because we took an enormous amount of pride, and you saw that. And then I think, you know, just a commonality there that Jeremiah Wright preached a sermon, and he said, you know, I'm not your enemy. And he was talking about how in our community, especially men and gangs, how we perceive each other as enemies when in fact I'm not your enemy. Okay. And there are systemic things that might kind of contribute to this behavior, but I am not your enemy. You're Muslim, I'm Christian. But beyond that, we're black men. I'm not your enemy.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I say it was the greatest show of unity, because we have Muslims, Christians, Hebrew Israelites.
A whole lot of Christians.
Right.
You had a lot of Christians.
Even though, as you said, though, the leadership did not endorse the march, the call for atonement, reconciliation, and responsibility, that's a divine call, you know, and it resonates in the soul of us as a people, because we're righteous by nature. And so people went, and sometimes they just went because they just had to go. They couldn't really intellectualize it. It was just something within that caused them to go. The civil rights leaders that were organizing with us, because there were many that put that march together. There were all kind of local organizing committees in every city. They said, well, you shouldn't have that march on a Monday. People have to work. You should do like what we did, do it on the weekend. And the minister said, no, this is an act of atonement. We want to sacrifice a day of work. We want to take a sacrifice a day of school. And we're asking those that can't go to stay at home. It's a day of absence. Let this enemy know what this world going to look like without us present. We're not going to be your maids. We're not going to be your workers today. We're staying home. We're not asking for permission. We're taking this. And that's exactly what happened.
One of the things there, we talk about technology. I think the Million Man March was the first large march they had where you all had the jumbotrons. I don't think anybody had done that until the Million Man March. And there had been marches there. And the other thing was you couldn't make a cell phone call. It was so many people trying to uplink to and really have the satellites we have now. So we couldn't make a cell phone call.
Well, I got a call in. I
Did you?
How I got a call in,
because you organizing.
but what you said about the jumbotrons is really important. I didn't realize it was the first time, but we had jumbotrons every so many yards or whatever. That cost millions and millions of dollars. And so the other historical part of the march is that nobody financed that march except for us,
right?
Black people. We financed our own march. So nobody could control the narrative. Nobody could control who could speak, who could not speak. It was the first time that we independently put on an event of such size and magnitude.
And